Cancer, there comes a point in every life when something clicks into place, not with a dramatic sound, but with a quiet certainty that rises from somewhere deep inside. It is the moment when all the lessons, all the pain, all the waiting, and all the small invisible acts of courage suddenly make sense. And Cancer, you are standing at the edge of that moment right now. You may not fully recognize it yet. Growth rarely announces itself the way we expect it to. It does not arrive with a banner or a celebration. It arrives in the way you respond to a conversation that once would have broken you. It arrives in the way you set a boundary without apologizing for it. It arrives in the quiet morning moments when you catch yourself thinking, something is different, and you cannot quite explain what, but you can feel it. That is what this message is about. That feeling, that readiness, that moment when the seed that has been buried in darkness for so long finally pushes through the surface and reaches toward the light. Stay with me through this entire video because by the end, you will not only understand what is happening inside you, you will know exactly how to honor it. Realization 1. The first sign that you are ready to grow is the way you have stopped running from uncomfortable truths. Cancer, you have always had a protective instinct not just toward the people you love but toward yourself. When something felt too painful to face, you instinctively built a wall around it. You tucked it away. You told yourself you would deal with it later, and sometimes later never came. But something has changed. Lately, you have found yourself willing to look at things you used to avoid. Old wounds that you kept sealed shut are starting to open, not because they are getting worse, but because you are finally strong enough to tend to them properly. You are asking yourself questions that you used to be afraid of. Questions about what you really want, about whether the life you are living truly reflects who you are, about whether the relationships you have been holding on to are serving you or simply familiar. And instead of flinching when the answers are uncomfortable, you are breathing through them. You are sitting with the discomfort. You are letting the truth land without immediately trying to fix it or explain it away. This is enormous, Cancer. This is the kind of emotional bravery that most people never develop, and you are doing it quietly without anyone handing you an award or even noticing the shift. But the universe notices, and it is responding by opening doors that were previously locked to you, because those doors only open for people who are willing to be honest with themselves. The fact that you are no longer running from the hard truths is not a sign of weakness. It is the clearest possible sign that you are ready for what comes next. Realization 2. The second sign is the way your standards have quietly risen without you making a conscious decision to raise them. You did not wake up one morning and say, I am going to demand more from my life. It happened organically, gradually, like a tide that rises so slowly you do not notice it until you look down and realize the water is at your knees. The things you used to tolerate, you no longer can. The conversations that used to feel acceptable now feel shallow. The relationships that used to fill your time now feel like they are wasting it. And the version of yourself that used to settle for less, she is fading quietly and without drama, like a photograph left too long in the sun. This is not about becoming picky or difficult. This is about your soul recalibrating to a frequency that matches the person you are becoming rather than the person you used to be. And Cancer, that is a critical distinction. Because when your standards rise from a place of genuine growth, they do not repel the right people. They attract them. They create space for connections and opportunities that could never have reached you before, because you were too busy filling your life with things that were merely adequate. Adequate is no longer enough for you. And the moment you stopped accepting it, the universe took notice. It began rearranging things on your behalf. It began removing what no longer fits so that what does fit can find its way to you. This can feel unsettling. Can feel like things are falling apart when they are actually falling into place. But trust the process, because the emptiness that comes when you release what is merely adequate is not a void. It is a clearing, and something extraordinary is about to grow there. Realization 3. The third sign that you are ready to grow is the way you have started forgiving, not because anyone asked you to, but because you are tired of carrying the weight. Cancer, you have one of the longest emotional memories in the entire zodiac. You remember the exact words someone used when they hurt you. You remember the tone, the setting, the way it felt in your body. And for years you held on to those memories like evidence in a case you were building. A case that proved you were right to be guarded, right to be cautious, right to keep people at a safe distance. But something has shifted. You have started to realize that the case is not protecting you anymore. It is imprisoning you. Every grudge you carry takes up space that could be used for joy. Every resentment you hold is a chain that keeps you tethered to a version of yourself that existed before you had the wisdom you have now. And you are tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, but the kind that only forgiveness can reach. So you have begun to let go. Not all at once. Not with some dramatic declaration. But quietly, in the privacy of your own heart, you have started to release the people who hurt you. Not because they deserve it. Not because what they did was acceptable. But because you deserve to be free. In Cancer, that distinction is everything. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to the person who wronged you. It is a gift you give to yourself. It is the act of saying, I will no longer allow this pain to define my present or dictate my future. And when you reach that point, when you truly internalize that truth, something miraculous happens. The weight lifts. The space opens. And the growth that was waiting for you on the other side of that forgiveness, it rushes in like water through a broken dam. Realization 4. The fourth sign is the way you have begun to trust your own timing. For most of your life, Cancer, you have compared your progress to other people's timelines. You watched friends achieve milestones that you were still working toward. You saw people your age who seemed to have it figured out while you were still searching. And that comparison created a quiet but persistent sense of failure, as if life was a race and you were falling behind. But recently, you have started to understand something that changes everything. Your path was never meant to look like anyone else's. The things that took you longer to achieve took longer because they needed to. The lessons that came late because you were not ready for them earlier. The doors that did not open when you wanted them to stayed closed because what was behind them at that time was not what you truly needed. And now, standing where you are, with all the wisdom that only delayed timing can produce, you can see it clearly. You are not behind. You never were. You were simply on a different route, one that required more depth, more emotional processing, more refinement of character before it could deliver you to your destination. And Cancer, that destination is closer than it has ever been. The fact that you have stopped comparing yourself to others is one of the most liberating realizations a person can have. Because when you release the need to match someone else's pace, you suddenly have the energy to run your own. And your pace, the one that honors your sensitivity, your depth, and your need for emotional thoroughness, is exactly the pace that will carry you to the life you have been dreaming of. If what you're hearing feels accurate, imagine what could happen if you applied this energy intentionally for 21 consecutive days. That's exactly what the 21-day program in the pinned comment is built for. Daily guidance, focused direction, and real momentum. If you're tired of staying in the same cycle, this is your structure. Realization 5. The fifth sign is the way you have started choosing peace over being right. Cancer, you have a strong sense of justice. When you feel you have been treated unfairly, every fiber of your being wants to set the record straight. You want the other person to understand what they did. You want acknowledgement. You want the satisfaction of knowing that the truth was heard. But lately, you have started asking yourself a different question. Instead of asking, how do I make them understand, you have started asking, what will give me the most peace? And those two questions lead to very different places. The first one keeps you entangled in other people's perceptions. It keeps you fighting battles that, even when won, leave you exhausted and empty. The second one leads you inward, to a place where your peace is not dependent on anyone else's understanding. This shift is not about becoming passive or allowing people to walk over you. It is about recognizing that some battles cost more than they are worth. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with your dignity intact, knowing that you do not need someone else to validate your experience in order for it to be real. Cancer, this is a sign of extraordinary maturity, and it is one of the clearest indicators that you have outgrown the version of yourself that needed to be understood by everyone. The new version of you, the one that is emerging right now, understands that peace is the highest currency, that protecting your inner calm is more valuable than winning an argument, and that the people who truly see you, they will never need to be convinced. Realization 6. The sixth sign is the way you have started making decisions based on where you want to go rather than where you have been. For so long, Cancer, your choices were shaped by your past. You avoided certain situations because they reminded you of painful experiences. You stayed in certain patterns because they were familiar, even when they no longer served you. You approached new opportunities with the caution of someone who had been burned before, and while that caution kept you safe, it also kept you small. But something is changing. You are starting to make choices that are oriented toward the future rather than the past. When a new opportunity presents itself, instead of immediately cataloging all the ways it could go wrong based on what has happened before, you are starting to ask, what if this time is different? What if I am different? And that question, that willingness to entertain the possibility that the future does not have to repeat the past, is one of the most powerful shifts you could ever make. As Cancer, you are different. The person who was hurt before is not the person sitting here today. The person who made those mistakes, who trusted the wrong people, who stayed too long in situations that were clearly not working, that person learned from every single one of those experiences. And the person you are now carries all of that wisdom. You are not going into the future unprotected. You are going into it armed with a lifetime of emotional intelligence and hard-won clarity. Let that be enough. Let that give you the courage to step forward instead of constantly looking over your shoulder. The past was your teacher. It was never meant to be your prison. Realization 7. The 7th sign that you are ready to grow is the way solitude has started to feel different. Cancer, there was a time when being alone felt like punishment. It felt like evidence that something was wrong with you, that you were too much for people, too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. Being alone used to trigger a cascade of anxious thoughts about whether you were loved, whether you mattered, whether anyone would notice if you disappeared. But something has shifted. Solitude is beginning to feel like sanctuary. You are starting to enjoy the quiet. You are discovering that being alone does not mean being lonely, and that the space between you and the world is not empty. It is full of yourself. Full of your thoughts, your creativity, your prayers, your imagination, your relationship with the part of you that exists beyond roles and responsibilities. This shift is profoundly important, because a person who can be at peace alone is a person who can never be controlled by the fear of abandonment. And Cancer, that fear has driven so many of your decisions over the years. It made you stay when you should have left. It made you shrink when you should have expanded. It made you accept treatment that was beneath you because the alternative, being alone, felt worse than the pain you were enduring. But now that solitude has become your friend rather than your enemy, the entire equation changes. You no longer need to hold on to people or situations out of fear. You can hold on to them out of genuine desire, out of love, out of choice. And that is the difference between a life lived in survival mode and a life lived in freedom. Cancer, you are stepping into freedom. And the fact that you can feel it, that you can recognize it, is the surest sign that you are ready. Some people watch, others transform. If you want to be in the second group, the 21-day guide in the pinned comment gives you a clear step-by-step process aligned with your sign. This isn't about waiting, it's about moving. Realization 8. The 8th sign is the way you have started to believe, perhaps for the first time in a very long time, that good things are not only possible for you but are actively on their way. Cancer, you have spent years bracing for the worst. Your emotional sensitivity made you hyper-aware of all the things that could go wrong, and your past experiences confirmed that sometimes they did. So you developed a habit of hoping quietly but expecting disappointment. You learned to manage your expectations so that when the blow came, it would not hurt as much. And while that strategy protected you from certain kinds of pain, it also robbed you of something essential: the ability to fully anticipate joy. But that is changing now. You are beginning to let yourself hope without the safety net of pessimism. You are beginning to imagine a future that is not just bearable, but genuinely beautiful. And instead of immediately shutting that vision down with a list of reasons why it probably will not happen, you are letting it linger. You are letting it breathe. You are letting it take root in your heart like a seed that has finally found the right soil. This is the moment, Cancer. This is the realization that ties everything else together. Because when you truly believe that growth is possible, that you are worthy of receiving good things, that the universe is not conspiring against you but conspiring for you, everything shifts. Your energy changes. Your posture changes. The way you walk into a room changes. The way you respond to setbacks changes. And the way the world responds to you changes in return. You are ready, not because everything is perfect, not because all the wounds have healed, not because you have all the answers, but because you have reached a place inside yourself where you can hold both the uncertainty and the hope at the same time, where you can acknowledge that life is unpredictable and still choose to believe that what is coming is good. That is readiness. That is growth. And Cancer, that is exactly where you are standing right now. Stay in this energy. Let it carry you. Let it shape the decisions you make in the coming weeks and months, because the person who is ready to grow is the person who receives the harvest, and yours has been a long time coming. You have two options after this video: close it and hope things shift, or decide that the next 21 days will be different. If you choose the second, the structured 21-day transformation aligned with your sign is waiting in the pinned comment. The energy is already moving, the only question is whether you are.